A month had passed since Daniel Harper lost his mother, Eleanor. The house felt eerily quiet without her laughter echoing through the halls, or the comforting aroma of her cooking wafting from the kitchen. Every corner of their home seemed to hold a memory of her. Her favorite armchair by the window where she would sit and knit, the bookshelf filled with novels she loved, even the garden outside that she tended to with such care. But now all those things felt like relics of a life that no longer existed. Daniel wandered aimlessly through the days, his grief weighing heavily on him. He tried going back to work at the local bookstore, but he couldn't focus. His mind kept drifting to memories of his mother, how she used to hum while making breakfast, how she always knew exactly what to say when he was feeling down, how her hugs could make everything seem okay again. Without her, nothing felt right anymore. Even simple tasks like doing laundry or washing dishes felt overwhelming, as if the world had slowed down just for him to feel every second of absence more acutely. Every evening, Daniel visited her grave. It was located in a small cemetery on the edge of town, surrounded by tall oak trees that swayed gently in the breeze. He brought fresh flowers each time, roses, because they were her favorite, and placed them carefully on the headstone. Sometimes, he talked to her, telling her about his day or sharing stories from their past. Other times, he simply sat there in silence, staring at the engraved words. Eleanor Harper, beloved mother. Those two words didn't feel like enough to capture who she was. To Daniel, she wasn't just beloved or mother. She was his entire world. But something gnawed at him, something he couldn't quite put into words. Her death had been sudden, a heart attack according to the doctors. One moment she was fine, planning trips and baking pies, the next she was gone. It didn't add up. She had always been healthy, full of energy, and endlessly optimistic. How could someone like that leave so abruptly? The questions haunted him, keeping him awake at night. He replayed the last few weeks before her passing over and over in his mind, searching for clues, anything that might explain why this tragedy happened. One particular memory stood out vividly. Just a few days before she died, Eleanor had taken Daniel to lunch at their favorite diner. She seemed unusually reflective that day, asking him questions about his dreams and future plans. At the time, he thought nothing of it. It wasn't unusual for her to be curious about his life, but looking back, her behavior struck him as odd. She had mentioned wanting to write letters to people she cared about, though she never elaborated. And then there was the way she hugged him goodbye afterward, holding on longer than usual, as if trying to memorize the feeling of his arms around her. These fragments of memories swirled in Daniel's mind like pieces of a puzzle he couldn't solve. He wanted to believe that her death was natural, that sometimes these things just happened, but deep down he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Maybe it was denial, maybe it was hope, or maybe it was something else entirely. Whatever it was, it drove him to keep searching, even when logic told him there was nothing left to find. On one particularly gray afternoon, Daniel decided to tackle the attic. It was a place he hadn't ventured into since his mother's passing, partly because he dreaded confronting the flood of memories stored there and partly because he didn't have the energy. But today, something compelled him to climb the creaky stairs and push open the dusty door. The air smelled musty, and sunlight streamed through the tiny window, illuminating motes of dust floating lazily in the air. Boxes lined the walls, stacked haphazardly and labeled in his mother's neat handwriting. Some contained old clothes, others held holiday decorations, and a few were marked memories. Daniel hesitated before reaching for one labeled keepsakes. Inside, he found an assortment of items, faded photographs, ticket stubs from concerts they attended together, a bracelet he made for her in elementary school. Each object stirred a different memory, pulling him deeper into the labyrinth of his emotions. Then, tucked beneath a postcard from Paris, he spotted a folded piece of paper. It looked ordinary at first glance, but as he unfolded it, his breath caught in his throat. Written in his mother's unmistakable handwriting were 3 lines that sent chills down his spine. Dear Daniel, if you find this, I need you to know the truth. Look closer. Love, Mom. His hands trembled as he read the note again and again, trying to decipher its meaning. What truth? What was she trying to tell him? The note offered no answers, only more questions. Yet, despite the confusion swirling, in his mind, Daniel felt a flicker of determination ignite within him. If his mother went to the trouble of leaving this message, it meant she wanted him to uncover something important. Whatever it was, he owed it to her, and to himself, to find out. That night, as rain pattered against his bedroom window, Daniel lay awake, clutching the note tightly in his hand. For the first time since her death, he felt a spark of purpose. Grief still loomed large, but now it mingled with curiosity and resolve. He didn't know where this journey would lead or what secrets awaited him, but one thing was certain. He wouldn't stop until he uncovered the truth behind his mother's final message. The discovery of the note left Daniel restless. Sleep eluded him as he replayed the words over and over in his mind. If you find this, I need you to know the truth. What truth? And why had she hidden it so carefully? The cryptic message gnawed at him, urging him to dig deeper. It was as if Eleanor herself was guiding him from beyond, leaving breadcrumbs for him to follow. But where did they lead? That question consumed him. The next morning, Daniel woke up feeling both anxious and determined. He couldn't shake the feeling that the attic held more secrets waiting to be uncovered. After a quick breakfast of toast and coffee, eaten absent-mindedly, while staring out the window, he returned to the dusty space above the house. This time, he approached it with purpose. Every box, every item felt like a potential clue in the mystery his mother had set before him. He started methodically, opening each container and examining its contents. Some boxes were filled with mundane things: old blankets, mismatched dishes, stacks of magazines yellowed with age, but others contained treasures that brought back vivid memories. There was a photo album stuffed with pictures of family vacations, birthday parties, and lazy summer afternoons spent by the lake. Each image seemed to whisper stories of happier times, reminding Daniel of how much joy his mother had brought into his life. Yet mixed among these cherished mementos, he found nothing that hinted at what the truth might be. As the hours passed, frustration began to creep in. Was he chasing shadows? Had the note been some kind of random scribble, meaningless in the grand scheme of things? Just when he was about to give up, he noticed something tucked away in the farthest corner of the attic. A small wooden chest half hidden beneath a pile of old quilts. Its surface was scratched and worn, but the brass clasp gleamed faintly in the dim light. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't seen this chest before, and its presence felt significant somehow. Carefully, he pulled it out and placed it on the floor. The lid creaked open, revealing a collection of items that clearly meant something special to Eleanor. There were letters tied with ribbon, postcards from places Daniel didn't recognize, and a delicate silver locket engraved with tiny flowers. Nestled among these keepsakes was another folded piece of paper, slightly larger than the first note he'd found. His hands trembled as he picked it up and unfolded it. Written in her familiar handwriting were instructions that sent a jolt through him. Go back to where we last said goodbye. At first, the words confused him. Where exactly had they last said goodbye? Then it hit him. The cemetery. Of course. The place where he thought he'd laid her to rest forever. A chill ran down his spine at the thought of returning there, especially with such an ominous directive. Still, he knew he couldn't ignore it. If his mother wanted him to go back, then he owed it to her, and to himself, to do as she asked. That evening, under the cover of darkness, Daniel drove to the cemetery. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the rows of headstones. The air was cool and damp, carrying the scent of freshly turned earth. As he walked toward Eleanor's grave, his footsteps echoed softly against the silence. It felt surreal to be here again, not to mourn, but to search for answers. For the first time, he wasn't just visiting her resting place. He was actively seeking something she had left behind. Reaching her grave, Daniel knelt down and traced his fingers over the engraved words on the headstone. Beloved Mother, it read. though those two words suddenly felt insufficient. She wasn't just beloved or a mother. She was a person full of secrets, hopes, and fears. Who was she really? What had she been trying to protect him from? These questions swirled in his mind as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small toolkit he'd brought along. He hesitated for a moment, guilt warring with curiosity. Was this wrong? Desecrating her final resting place? No, he reasoned. She wouldn't have led him here unless she wanted him to uncover something important. With trembling hands, he pried open the coffin. The sound of metal scraping against wood sent shivers down his spine, but he pressed on. When the lid finally gave way, he froze, expecting emptiness. Instead, nestled beneath the satin lining, he found an envelope. His breath hitched as he picked it up. It was plain, unmarked, but its very existence was enough to send his pulse racing. Slowly, he opened it and pulled out a single sheet of paper. On it, written in her unmistakable handwriting, were 4 words that stopped him cold. "Meet me where we first danced under the stars." For a long moment, Daniel simply stared at the note, his mind struggling to process what it meant. Where had they danced under the stars? Then it came to him, a memory buried deep within the recesses of his mind. Years ago, when he was still a teenager, Eleanor had taken him to a secluded hilltop outside town. They spread a blanket on the grass and spent hours watching meteor showers streak across the night sky. It was one of his happiest memories with her, a rare moment of pure connection between mother and son. Could she really be asking him to return to that spot? The idea seemed impossible. Yet the note was undeniable proof that Eleanor had planned this all along. She wasn't gone, not completely. Somehow she had orchestrated this elaborate scavenger hunt, leading him step by step toward what? Answers? Closure? Or perhaps even something more extraordinary. Whatever it was, Daniel knew he couldn't turn back now. The journey she had set in motion demanded his full attention, and he was determined to see it through. Driving home that night, Daniel's mind raced with possibilities. What awaited him at the hilltop? Would he find another clue, or would the trail end there? Part of him feared disappointment, dreaded finding nothing but empty promises. But another part clung to hope, fueled by the conviction that his mother wouldn't have gone to such lengths without reason. Something or someone was waiting for him, and he intended to find out who or what it was. When he arrived home, he placed the notes and envelope carefully on his desk, arranging them like pieces of a puzzle. Each word, each instruction, felt like a thread pulling him closer to the truth. Though exhaustion weighed heavily on him, sleep remained elusive. Instead, he sat in the dim light of his desk lamp, staring at the items and replaying the events of the day in his mind. Tomorrow he would follow the next clue. Tomorrow he would take another step closer to understanding the enigma that was his mother. But as he drifted off to sleep, one thought lingered in his mind. If Eleanor had faked her death, then where was she now? And why had she done it? The answers lay ahead, hidden beneath layers of mystery and memory, waiting for him to uncover them. The morning after Daniel's midnight visit to the cemetery, he woke up with a strange mix of emotions swirling in his chest. Excitement, fear, confusion. They all battled for dominance as he replayed the events of the previous night in his mind. The note he'd found in the coffin still felt surreal, like something out of a dream. But it wasn't a dream. The envelope and its cryptic message were real, sitting on his desk as undeniable proof that his mother had left him a trail to follow. Eleanor's instructions, "Meet me where we first danced under the stars," were clear enough, but they also carried an air of mystery that made Daniel uneasy. Memories of that magical evening came flooding back as he prepared for the day ahead. He remembered how she had surprised him one summer night, dragging him out of the house with a blanket and a thermos of hot chocolate. They drove to a secluded hilltop outside town, far from the lights and noise of civilization. There, under a vast sky glittering with stars, they lay side by side, pointing out constellations and laughing at their own clumsy attempts to identify them. It was one of those rare moments when Daniel felt truly connected to his mother. not just as her son, but as a person sharing a moment of beauty and wonder with another human being. That night had stayed with him over the years, tucked away in the recesses of his memory like a cherished keepsake. Now, Eleanor's note brought it rushing back, along with a flood of questions. Why would she send him there? What could possibly be waiting for him at that spot? Determined to find out, Daniel packed a small bag with essentials: water, snacks, a flashlight, and the notes he'd collected so far. As he drove toward the hilltop, the landscape transformed around him. The bustling streets of the town gave way to winding country roads lined with tall trees and open fields. The farther he went, the quieter the world became, until all he could hear was the hum of his car engine and the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. It was peaceful, yet the anticipation gnawing at him kept his nerves taut. When he finally reached the hilltop, the sight took his breath away. Years had passed since he'd last been here, but the place hadn't changed much. The grass was taller now, wildflowers dotted the landscape, and the view of the horizon stretched endlessly before him. Standing there, Daniel couldn't help but feel a pang of nostalgia. This was where they had laughed, talked, and marveled at the universe together. And now, it was where his mother wanted him to meet her, or at least continue the journey she had set in motion. He walked slowly across the field, scanning the area for anything unusual. At first glance, everything seemed normal. Birds chirped in the distance, and a gentle breeze ruffled his hair. But then, as he approached the exact spot where they had spread their blanket all those years ago, something caught his eye. A patch of earth that looked slightly disturbed. Kneeling down, he brushed away the layer of grass and dirt to reveal the edge of a wooden box buried just beneath the surface. His heart raced as he dug it out carefully, brushing off the remaining soil. The box was small and weathered, its surface scratched and faded from exposure to the elements. It looked like it had been there for some time, hidden away until someone, him, came to retrieve it. With trembling hands, Daniel opened the lid and peered inside. What he found sent a jolt of shock through him. Inside the box were two items: a leather-bound journal and a key attached to a tag labeled Room 214. The journal was worn, its pages yellowed with age, and the key gleamed faintly despite its tarnished appearance. Daniel picked up the journal first, running his fingers over its cover. It felt heavy in his hands, not just physically but emotionally. Whatever was written inside, he knew it held answers. Answers his mother had gone to great lengths to ensure, he found. Flipping through the pages briefly, he saw that they were filled with her handwriting. Some entries were short, others long, but each one seemed to carry weight, as if she had poured her soul into every word. For now, though, he resisted the urge to read it fully. Instead, he focused on the key. Room 210. Where could it lead? A hotel? A storage unit? His mind raced with possibilities, but nothing concrete emerged. All he knew was that this was the next step in the journey Eleanor had planned for him. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, Daniel allowed himself a moment to process everything. This entire experience felt surreal, like stepping into a storybook where clues led to more clues, each one unraveling a deeper layer of truth. Yet, despite the strangeness of it all, there was a sense of purpose driving him forward. Every discovery brought him closer to understanding his mother, not just who she was as a parent, but who she was as a person. And maybe, just maybe, it would bring him closer to finding her again. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the hilltop, Daniel packed up the journal and key and headed back to his car. The drive home was quiet, his thoughts consumed by what he had uncovered. By the time he arrived, night had fallen and the house felt eerily silent. He placed the items on the kitchen table and stared at them for a long moment, debating whether to dive into the journal immediately or wait until morning. Exhaustion won out in the end, but sleep didn't come easily. Lying in bed, Daniel replayed the day's events in his mind. The hilltop, the buried box, the journal, the key. It all felt like pieces of a puzzle slowly coming together. But the bigger picture remained elusive, shrouded in mystery. Who was Eleanor Harper really? Was she the loving, selfless mother? He had always known, or was there another side to her that he had never seen? And why had she chosen to disappear rather than face whatever challenges life had thrown her way? These questions haunted him as he drifted off to sleep, the weight of them pressing down on his chest. Yet even amidst the uncertainty, a spark of hope flickered within him. If Eleanor had gone to such lengths to leave these clues, then she must have believed he was capable of following them. She trusted him to uncover the truth no matter how difficult or painful it might be. That thought gave him strength, fueling his determination to keep going. The next morning, Daniel woke up with renewed resolve. He brewed a pot of coffee and sat down at the kitchen table, the journal and key laid out before him like treasures waiting to be explored. Taking a deep breath, he opened the journal and began reading. Each page revealed fragments of his mother's inner world, her fears, her hopes, her regrets. It was both heartbreaking and illuminating, offering glimpses into a side of her he had never fully understood. But the key still remained a mystery. Where did room 214 lead? And what awaited him there? Those questions would have to wait for another day. For now, Daniel focused on absorbing the words his mother had left behind, piecing together the story she had woven for him. With every sentence, he felt himself drawing closer to her, not just as a memory, but as a presence guiding him through this extraordinary journey. And though the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear. Eleanor Harper was far from gone. Her voice echoed through the pages of the journal. Her love lingered in the clues she had left, and her spirit guided him onward. Whatever truths lay ahead, Daniel was ready to face them. The morning light streamed through the kitchen window as Daniel sat at the table, the leather-bound journal open before him. He had spent hours poring over its pages the previous night, but now he was ready to dive deeper. Each entry revealed a side of Eleanor that Daniel hadn't fully grasped before, her fears, her dreams, and most shockingly, her secrets. The journal wasn't just a collection of thoughts. It was a roadmap to understanding why she had disappeared. As he flipped through the pages, one particular entry stood out. Written in her neat handwriting, it began with an apology. "Dear Daniel, if you're reading this, then I've already made my choice. Please don't hate me for what I've done." His heart clenched at those words. Hate her? How could he ever hate her? But the tone of the entry suggested she knew how difficult it would be for him to accept her decision. She went on to explain her diagnosis, a terminal illness that doctors said would take her life within months. The news had shattered her, not because she feared death, but because she couldn't bear the thought of watching Daniel suffer through her decline. She described the pain of seeing loved ones fade slowly, having witnessed it herself when her own father battled cancer years earlier. "I couldn't do that to you," she wrote. "I couldn't let you watch me waste away, helpless and broken." Instead, she chose a different path, one that required immense courage and sacrifice. With the help of a close friend who worked at the hospital, she faked her death, staging a heart attack to make it believable. It was risky, she admitted, but she believed it was the only way to spare Daniel the agony of losing her gradually. Her plan was to disappear quietly, retreating to a place where she could live out her remaining days in peace, away from the world she loved but no longer felt part of. Reading these words, Daniel felt a storm of emotions brewing inside him. Anger, sadness, confusion, they all swirled together, making it hard to focus. How could she keep something like this from him? Didn't she trust him to stand by her side no matter what? Yet even as the questions burned in his mind, he understood her reasoning. Eleanor had always been selfless, putting others' needs above her own. In her eyes, disappearing was the ultimate act of love, a way to shield him from the worst kind of pain. The journal also contained practical details about her new life. She mentioned renting a cabin in a remote area, far from prying eyes, where she intended to spend her final days surrounded by nature. She spoke of finding solace in the quiet beauty of the mountains, the sound of birdsong in the mornings, and the sight of stars at night. Though her body was failing, she wanted her spirit to remain free, untethered by the constraints of illness. But there was more. Scattered throughout the entries were references to room 214 and the key he'd found in the wooden box. At first, Daniel assumed it referred to a hotel room or storage unit, but the journal hinted at something else entirely. One passage read, "If you find the key, use it wisely. Room 214 holds everything I want you to have, my savings, letters, and instructions on how to reach me. Trust your instincts, Daniel. You'll know what to do." Those words sent a shiver down his spine. Everything she wanted him to have? Reach her? Did that mean she was still alive? The possibility ignited a spark of hope deep within him. Could it really be true? Could his mother, whom he had buried weeks ago, still be out there somewhere, waiting for him? With the journal tucked safely under his arm and the key clutched tightly in his hand, Daniel set out to uncover the mystery of room 214. Based on the context of the journal, he suspected it might be located at a nearby inn or lodge. The town wasn't large, so there weren't many places that fit the description. After some thought, he decided to visit the Maplewood Inn, a modest establishment on the outskirts of town that his mother had occasionally mentioned fondly. When he arrived, the inn looked exactly as he remembered it, quaint and charming, with flower boxes lining the windows and a warm glow emanating from inside. Stepping through the door, he was greeted by the scent of fresh-baked bread and the sound of soft piano music playing in the background. Behind the counter stood Mrs. Thompson, the innkeeper, a kindly woman in her 60s who had known Eleanor for years. "Daniel," she exclaimed, her face lighting up with recognition. "It's been too long. How are you holding up?" Her question caught him off guard. Everyone in town knew about Eleanor's supposed passing, and he hadn't expected anyone to bring it up so casually. For a moment he hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. Then, deciding honesty was his best option, he replied, "I'm doing okay, I guess. Actually, I'm here because of Mom. She left something for me. At least, I think she did." Mrs. Thompson's expression softened and she nodded knowingly. "Ah, yes. Eleanor told me you might come looking for answers someday. She always spoke so highly of you, you know. Said you were the strongest person she'd ever met." Daniel blinked in surprise. "You knew about this? About her plan?" The innkeeper sighed, her gaze drifting to the floor for a moment before meeting his eyes again. "She confided in me, yes. It wasn't easy for her to make that choice, but she believed it was the right thing to do, for both of you. She loved you more than anything, Daniel. Never doubt that." Her words hit him like a wave, washing over him with a mix of comfort and sorrow. He swallowed hard, pushing aside the lump forming in his throat. "Do you know anything about room 214? He asked, holding up the key. Mrs. Thompson smiled faintly and gestured for him to follow her. Together they climbed the creaky staircase to the second floor, where she stopped in front of a door marked with the number 214. Unlocking it with a master key, she stepped aside to let him enter. "This is it," she said softly. "Everything she left for you is inside." The room was small but cozy, with floral wallpaper, a queen-sized bed, and a desk nestled against the far wall. On the desk sat a single envelope addressed to him, in Eleanor's handwriting. Beside it lay a small stack of papers, neatly organized, along with a bundle of cash wrapped in a rubber band. Daniel approached cautiously, almost reverently, as if afraid the contents might vanish if he moved too quickly. He picked up the envelope first, opening it carefully to reveal a letter written in his mother's familiar script. It began with words of love and reassurance, reminding him of how proud she was of the man he had become. Then she explained the purpose of the items in the room. The money was meant to cover any expenses he might incur while searching for her, and the papers included detailed instructions on how to reach the cabin where she was staying. "Week by week I'll leave markers for you," she wrote. "Follow them, and you'll find me. But remember, Daniel, this isn't just about reaching me. It's about understanding why I did what I did and forgiving me if you can. I need you to know that my decision came from a place of love, not fear. I didn't abandon you. I gave you the freedom to grieve without the weight of watching me suffer." Tears blurred his vision as he read the final lines. I'm not truly gone, my darling son. Not yet. Come find me, and let's create one last chapter together." For a long moment, Daniel simply stood there, clutching the letter to his chest. The weight of her words settled over him like a comforting blanket, easing the ache in his heart even as it deepened his resolve. She was alive. Somewhere out there, Eleanor Harper was waiting for him, hoping he would come to understand and, perhaps, forgive the choices she had made. As he packed the items into his bag, Daniel felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just a journey to find his mother. It was a journey to rediscover her. Along the way, he would uncover truths about her, about himself, and about the unbreakable bond they shared. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready to face them. Because for the first time since her supposed passing, he had hope. Not just that she was alive, but that their story wasn't over yet. The discovery in room 214 left Daniel with a whirlwind of emotions. The letter, the money, and the instructions were tangible proof that Eleanor was alive and waiting for him. But more than that, they carried her love, her regret, and her unwavering hope that he would understand why she had done what she did. For hours after leaving the inn, Daniel sat in his car, staring at the map she had left behind. It was hand-drawn, marked with landmarks and notes in her familiar handwriting. Each detail felt like a piece of her reaching out to guide him forward. The journey ahead wasn't going to be easy. The cabin was located in a remote mountain village several hours away, accessible only by winding roads that snaked through dense forests and steep cliffs. Daniel knew the trip would test his patience and resolve, but he didn't care. Every mile brought him closer to answers, and to her. As he started the engine and pulled onto the highway, he felt a strange mixture of excitement and apprehension. What would he find when he reached the end of this trail? Would she welcome him with open arms, or would she push him away, afraid of complicating his life further? The drive took him through breathtaking landscapes, rolling hills blanketed in wildflowers, rivers shimmering under the sun, and towering trees that seemed to stretch endlessly toward the sky. Yet despite the beauty surrounding him, Daniel's mind remained focused on Eleanor. He replayed memories of their time together, trying to reconcile the mother he thought he knew with the woman who had orchestrated such an elaborate plan to disappear. Was it selfishness or selflessness that drove her decision? Or perhaps both? These questions swirled in his mind as the miles passed beneath his tires. By late afternoon, the road grew narrower and rougher, forcing Daniel to slow down. The GPS signal faded in and out, leaving him reliant on the map Eleanor had provided. At one point, he stopped at a gas station nestled in the heart of the forest to double-check his route. The attendant, an elderly man with a weathered face and kind eyes, recognized the description of the cabin Eleanor had mentioned. "That old place?" he said with a chuckle. "Haven't seen anyone up there in years. Folks say it's haunted, but I reckon it's just lonely." Daniel thanked him and continued on, the comment lingering in his thoughts. Haunted or lonely, it didn't matter which. All that mattered was finding Eleanor. As dusk settled over the mountains, casting long shadows across the road, he finally arrived at the turnoff marked on the map. A narrow dirt path led deeper, into the woods barely wide enough for his car to navigate. Branches scraped against the sides of the vehicle as he inched forward, the sound grating against the silence of the wilderness. When he reached the clearing where the cabin stood, he parked and stepped out, taking a moment to absorb the scene before him. The cabin was small and rustic, its wooden walls weathered by time and nature. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, a sign that someone was home. His heart raced as he approached the front door, each step heavier than the last. What if she didn't want to see him? What if she refused to explain herself fully? The uncertainty gnawed at him, but he pushed it aside, reminding himself why he had come this far. Taking a deep breath, he knocked on the door. For a few agonizing seconds, there was no response. Then, slowly, the door creaked open, revealing Eleanor. She looked thinner and paler than he remembered, her once vibrant energy dimmed by illness, but her eyes still held the same warmth and love that had always defined her. They locked gazes, neither speaking, until tears began streaming down her face. Without a word, she opened her arms and Daniel stepped into them, holding her tightly as though afraid she might vanish again. For a long while, they simply stood there, embracing in silence. Words felt unnecessary in that moment. The weight of their shared grief, guilt, and love spoke louder than anything either could have said. When they finally pulled apart, Eleanor gestured for him to come inside. The interior of the cabin was simple yet cozy, with a crackling fire in the hearth and shelves lined with books and photographs. It smelled faintly of pine and lavender, a comforting aroma that reminded Daniel of home. "Sit," she said softly, motioning to a chair by the fire. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the emotions she was struggling to contain. Daniel obeyed, watching as she sank into the seat across from him, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The crackle of the fire filled the silence, punctuated only by the occasional chirp of crickets outside. Finally, Eleanor broke the quiet. "I know you must hate me," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I wouldn't blame you if you did." "What? I did. It was selfish in a way. I wanted to protect you, but I also couldn't bear the thought of saying goodbye properly. So I ran." Daniel shook his head, his own voice thick with emotion. "I don't hate you, Mom. I've been angry, confused, hurt, but never hate. I needed to understand why. Why you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth." Her eyes filled with tears again, spilling over as she reached for his hand. "Oh, Daniel, it wasn't about trust. It was about fear. Not yours, but mine. I was terrified of burdening you, of making you watch me suffer. I thought disappearing would give you the freedom to grieve without the pain of seeing me fade away. But now I realize how wrong I was. You deserved better than that. You deserved honesty." He squeezed her hand gently, feeling the lump in his throat grow larger. "It's not too late, Mom. We can fix this together. Just tell me everything, please." And so she did. Over the next few hours, Eleanor poured out her heart, sharing every detail of her diagnosis, her fears, and her decision to fake her death. She spoke of the loneliness she had felt in the months since leaving, missing Daniel more than words could express, yet knowing she had made the right choice, at least in her mind. She admitted that part of her had hoped he would never find her, allowing her to slip away quietly without complicating his life. But another part of her had yearned for him to follow the clues she left behind, proving that their bond was stronger than even death itself. As she talked, Daniel listened intently, absorbing every word. Some parts of her story made him angry. Others brought tears to his eyes, but all of it helped him understand her perspective. By the time she finished, the fire had burned low, casting flickering shadows across the room. Exhausted but lighter, Eleanor leaned back in her chair, her expression a mix of relief and apprehension. "What happens now?" she asked quietly, her gaze searching his face for answers. Daniel hesitated, considering her question. There were no easy solutions, no magical way to undo the pain and confusion of the past few months. But one thing was clear. He wasn't ready to let her go. Not yet. Not when they had been given this second chance to reconnect. "We make the most of the time we have left," he said firmly, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside him. "No more running, no more hiding. Whatever happens next, we face it together." Eleanor smiled through her tears, nodding in agreement. For the first time in months, Daniel felt a sense of peace settle over him. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would still be challenges, heartbreaks, and difficult conversations, but they would navigate it side by side. And in that moment, surrounded by the warmth of the fire and the love of his mother, Daniel realized something profound. Eleanor hadn't truly disappeared. She had simply found a different way to stay with him, guiding him toward a deeper understanding of their relationship and of life itself.